Old Tom Gray here. Made this dimple die a little while ago that's made for creating closed dimples like this, which can be used for toolbox feet or tightening up metal, shrinking it a little bit, or just creating some decorative features. And then had an exchange with a viewer, Stu Crane, to do a dimple with a hole in it, which is also sometimes called a flanged dimple. So thank you, Stu. So I went ahead and modified the idea, took the same style hinge and created it using a spacer instead of a washer, a big washer with a bolt stud in the middle of it instead of just flat space, and it makes dimples, flange dimples in 18 gauge steel with a 5/16, a 9/32 or a 1/4 inch hole. Again, it can be decorative, it can be used to stiffen sheet metal, it can be used to shrink it a little bit, and it can be used as a decorative feature around like a countersunk screw. I'll show you how I made it. All right, let's get started. This is the dimple die I made on the previous video. I'll put a link to it in the description. And it's made for making closed dimples like these little feet on my old Sawzall toolbox. And those are just to keep the box from sitting dead flat on a surface like a bench or the bed of your truck or whatever. So in that case, when I did the small side of the die, I was able to weld on the inside because the inside is not going to create an impression in the finished sheet metal. Well, that's not true on this one. This one, it does, the inside does create an impression on the visible part of the sheet metal. So instead of using a washer, this is a very thin washer, I'm going to use a spacer. And this is just one I found in the collection. And instead of mounting it out in the middle of a flat piece of material, I'm going to locate it over a hole. So I can use the hole for alignment. It means that the throat depth of this one is a little bit bigger than the throat depth of this one, about an inch difference. This will have a 2.5 inch throat depth, that has a 3.5. The rest of this stuff is what I'm going to use for setup. And this 3/8 bolt is going to be the thing that creates the flange on the inside. So these 4 parts will be the constituents of the finished tool. So all I did so far is I just knocked some of the finish off of the hinge flaps and the one side of the big washer. Now when washers are made, they're stamped or they're coined, and they've got a rounded corner and a sharp corner. You want the rounded corner towards the finished sheet metal. So that means up in this case. So first thing we got to do is this hinge is too sloppy. So we're going to tighten it up a little bit, and we'll do that in the vise. Okay, to tighten the hinge up, you can see that the hinge leaf is just rolled around the pin. And that's also true on the center barrel as well. So I'm just going to squeeze the barrels a little bit with the big Wilton here. See if we can take out some of the slop. That's better. Much better. Now the flanged part of the dimple is caused by the head of this flathead bolt going up inside this hole on the spacer. So I also want to use it to align the spacer to the hinge flap. So I'm going to drill this out to 3/8 and counterbore it, or countersink it pretty deep so that it sticks through. I'm just using one of these single hole style counterbores or countersinks. Okay, there it is. The amount of angle on the flathead sticking through that big countersink, that's what's going to give us our shape on the inside of the dimple. That and a little piece of shank of the bolt. In our little parts kit, we had this other spacer. So this spacer fits exactly into the enlarged hole. That's how I knew when to stop counterboring, was just to make that spacer fit. That spacer's OD is the same as this one's ID. So that drops right over that, and it'll hold it dead over that hole, and I can tack this in place. For this to work, the 3/8 bolt coming over from this side has to oppose the spacer that we just finished up. So that goes on this side, bolt goes on this side, big washer goes on this side. So to align the center of the spacer, I'm going to take advantage of the other little spacer with the assistance of a 5/16 nut. Just drop it in there, and a 5/16 bolt in that other spacer. Get it aligned, and then I can hold this down and tack the spacer in place. Now I need to cut the 3/8 bolt and point the end a little bit. I'm going to do that with the Dremel. Okay, I just tapered that down just enough so it fits into the hole on the opposite leaf of the hinge. Now I can tack the bolt. I'm going to take a piece of narrow 16 gauge and roughly shape a little bushing around the spacer and then cram it to the ID of the big washer. And then when I close the die, I can then align the big washer to the spacer like that, making sure that the good side is up, the rounded corners are up. I can position it just like so and tack it in place. Okay, maiden voyage. Piece of Simpson reinforcement with a 3/8 hole knocked in it. Our tack welded dimple die. Put sheet metal over 3/8 stubby thing. Close it. Put it in the vise. And reefer down. give it a little bit more. There you go. One flanged dimple. I'm going to see if it'll take a little bit more. Not bad. Might need to tune it up a little bit. Just had a different thought. So that's a 5/16 hole. Let's align that over our little nub and see what that doesn't do. Hey, that looks a little better. That's better. I think that's the trick. Use a 5/16 hole. Did a little more smoothing and a little more tweaking, just with sandpaper and the Dremel. And I'm going to try the 5/16 hole again. So that worked last time. This is 18 gauge, by the way, this Simpson patch plate thing. So here we go, piece of Simpson 18 gauge patch plate. Give her a squeeze. Reefer down. Pretty nice. Hey, that's ringing the bell. Okay, I'm gonna do the finish welding. Welding this, welding this, welding this, and clean it up. And then we'll give it one final proof test. Proof test. So there she is, all welded up and grinded up, wire brushed all the welds, all the dirt and whatever off. Let's give her a try. So here's our piece of sheet metal. That's a 5/16 hole. Into the vise. This is 18 gauge, by the way. Crank her down. There you go. That's a success. just for the sake of trying it, that's a 9/32 hole, and that's a 1/4 inch hole. Let's see how it works on those two. Not bad. Not bad. Quarter inch hole. It doesn't want to come out of there. Hey, look at that. Okay. So, look at that. So I'm going to say 1/4 inch actually worked the best on 18 gauge steel. On this side, anyway, it looks better. This is not the appearance side. On the appearance side, I'd say they're all the same. I really can't tell the difference. Maybe if I studied it long enough, but... well, there you go. Well, I'm going to call this one good. This is a success. Nice looking dimples. Simple tool, 4 pieces. Most out of the scrap bin for me, but I can't imagine there's more than about $20, $30 worth of stuff here. MIG welder, grinding wheel, nothing to it. So this one's done. This baby's going in service, and it's on to the next project. I will see you there and then.